I've made a lot of desserts, but today I'm sharing some of our favorites. And I made sure to pick out some that'll be perfect to make for this time of year. Hey y'all, I'm Valerie and welcome to my kitchen. In today's video, I'm sharing 6 of the best dessert recipes you can make for Christmas, and you are gonna love them. Okay y'all, let's get started. This first one is a cinnamon roll pie, and it is so good. To begin, in a large bowl, I'm adding 2 eggs, and the recipe says to beat them until they're foamy, and I'm not sure how foamy they're supposed to be, but I'll let them go for just a few minutes. This is what I got, so this is what I rolled with. Next, you're going to add in 3/4 cup of all-purpose flour, along with 1/2 cup of granulated sugar and 1/2 cup of packed brown sugar. Also, this was not in the recipe, but I added in about 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon, because why not? And I just gave this a little mix before I added in the butter, just so I didn't make a huge mess. And that's 3/4 cup of melted butter. I did melt that in the microwave, then I let it cool down for just a little bit. Now mix it until it's just combined. I found these Hershey's cinnamon baking chips at Walmart. You're going to add in 1 cup of these, and then you're going to use your spatula to fold them in. This was the first time that I've used these, and I loved them. Y'all, they would be really good in some cookies. I'm using this pie crust that I got from Aldi. Just make sure it's a deep dish one. And the recipe says to par bake it first for 10 minutes, but I didn't do that, and mine turned out just fine. I did place it on a baking sheet though, just in case it overflowed. And now I'm just pouring in all that cinnamon roll batter. And y'all, this batter smells amazing. Just get it all spread out in there, and this does puff up quite a bit, so make sure you use a deep dish crust. I put this in the oven to bake at 350 for about 45 minutes, or until the center is set and the top is golden brown. I did cover mine with foil about halfway through, just because the top was starting to get pretty brown and I didn't want it to burn. This pie was absolutely delicious. I'm talking, it went up there to the top at number 1 for me. It was that good. The cinnamon chips did sink to the bottom and created this gooey cinnamon roll filling layer that I loved. I topped mine with vanilla ice cream, but you could top it with whipped cream or just eat it like it is. I really hope you give this one a try. I think you'll love it. This Mounds Cake is a new family favorite. I got this recipe from Come Sit at My Table. They share some delicious recipes, and I'll be sure to link their video below. You'll need 1 box of chocolate cake mix. I'm using the dark chocolate fudge. I'm kind of following the directions on the back of the box, but instead of using water, I'm using milk. Instead of 3 eggs, I'm adding 4, and instead of oil, I'm adding melted butter. I'm telling you, you do this to any cake mix, and it'll take it to a whole nother level. Now you're going to mix this until it's well combined. And while I'm thinking about it, if you're new, I would really love to have you here. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below. That way you get notified of all my future videos. I am making this in a 9x13 baking dish. Mine is pretty large here, thank goodness. I'll tell you about that in a minute. I did spray it with nonstick spray because I did not want this cake to stick. Now pour in that cake batter and spread it out evenly. You're going to bake this cake according to the directions on the back of the box. I did give it a little tap to get some of those air bubbles out. That way it baked up a little more evenly. I'm going to be honest, when this cake came out of the oven, I was like, how in the world am I going to get a coconut layer and a chocolate layer on the top of this cake? I just went with it. Trust the process. And after that cake was completely cooled, I started on the coconut layer. In a large saucepan, I added 3/4 cup of milk, 3/4 cup of sugar, and 6 ounces of mini marshmallows. I let this cook over medium-low heat. Just keep on stirring until that sugar was completely dissolved and those marshmallows were completely melted. And while that's happening, in a microwave-safe bowl, I melted down 1 stick of butter and 12 ounces of semi-sweet chocolate chips. Just microwave it in 30-second intervals until it's completely melted. Now to that marshmallow mixture in the pan there, I'm adding a 14-ounce bag of sweetened coconut. Then just break it up and stir it. It'll be thick. You just want to make sure it's all mixed together. Now I'm removing it from the heat and heading over to the counter. You're going to take that coconut mixture and immediately spread it over the whole top of that cake. Make sure you cover everything. And I'm sitting here thinking, if you're more of an almond joy kind of person, over the top of that coconut layer, you could add on some chopped up almonds. I can pretty much bet that will be delicious. Now, this wasn't the easiest thing to spread out here, so I had to switch to my offset spatula. Well, this is the one I grabbed because the other one was dirty. I'm not really sure what you call this one, but it does come in handy for so many different things. Okay, since this baking dish was completely full and I didn't want that chocolate to run all over the sides, I did let that chocolate cool off a little just to thicken up a bit. That way it stayed on top of that cake and not all over the counter. And don't worry y'all, I made sure I got every last drop of that chocolate out of that bowl there. I'm just spreading it out to cover everything. But you don't want to let it cool off too much, because then you won't be able to spread it out. Now I'm going to show you what I was talking about when I said this baking dish was completely full. I'm telling you, it was over the top. But as long as you let that chocolate cool off just a little bit before you spread it on, I'm pretty sure everything's going to stay on there. And y'all, just looking at this makes me want to run make it again. Oh, and I still have so many box cake mix recipes that I really want to try. So y'all have to let me know in the comments below. If y'all want to see more, I will keep them coming. And this recipe was suggested to me by my daddy, so y'all have to thank him for this one. He's my #1 recipe finder, and let me tell you, he finds some really good ones. I just had to go back in my text messages and see exactly what he said about this one, and he had said it was off the chain delicious. And he was exactly right. This is definitely a dessert we'll be making again and again. This Cherries in the Snow dessert is one of my family's favorites, and if you don't believe me, you can ask my daddy. You're going to need a pretty big bowl here, and I'm adding 8 ounces of softened cream cheese and also 1/2 cup of powdered sugar. And I went ahead and gave that a mix just to whip up that cream cheese a little. We want this as smooth and creamy as we can get it. Next, I'm adding 1/2 cup of milk, and I'm just using 2%. Now we're going to mix this up until it's well combined. Now we're going to add in 12 ounces of whipped topping. I used 1.5 of those small containers. Oh, and you do want to make sure it's completely thawed. Oh, and I forgot earlier to add a teaspoon of vanilla, so I'm adding that now. Now we're just going to fold that together until it's all combined. I've got a store-bought pre-baked angel food cake here. I think it was about a 9-inch one. I cut it into small cubes, kind of like bite-sized pieces. Then you're just going to give that a stir until all that angel food cake is covered in that mixture. I'm using a 9x13 to make this in. Oh, and I bet it would be really pretty in a trifle dish too. Now all you gotta do is pour it all in there. Just make sure you get it all. We don't want to waste any. Now I'm spreading that out into an even layer. I'm using 2 of the 21-ounce cans of cherry pie filling. I'm adding those right on top and then gently spread them out. And this would be really good with blueberry pie filling too. You can even add a little lemon zest to that whipped cream mixture. That would be delicious. Okay, if you can be patient, I would go ahead and pop this in the refrigerator for about 1 hour before you serve it. This recipe is super simple to make, and I'm telling you, it's absolutely delicious. Using that store-bought angel food cake makes this quick and easy to make, and that whipped cream mixture is not too sweet, it's just right. And the cherries on top are my favorite. And Daddy, I know you're watching. I promise I will make this soon. Your birthday's coming up anyway. Y'all, he went crazy over this dessert. I forget the words he used, but he loved it. If you love cinnamon rolls, this cinnamon roll poke cake is guaranteed to be your new favorite cake. To make it in a large bowl, you're going to add in 1 15.25 ounce box of vanilla cake mix. You could also use a white cake mix or even a yellow if you needed to. Now I'm just making this up according to the directions on the back of the box. I added the eggs, oil, and I always replace the water with milk. Now we're going to mix this up until it's well combined. By the way, is there a certain flavor cake mix that you want to see more recipes using it? I try my best to show a variety, but there may be one that I'm missing maybe. Okay, after you get that cake batter really good and mixed up, you're going to grab a 9x13 baking dish, spray it with nonstick spray, and pour in that cake batter. And you want to make sure you get it good and spread out in there, that way it cooks evenly. Now this cake goes into the oven to bake at 350 according to the directions on the back of the box. Here it is out of the oven, and we're going to let it cool for only about 5 minutes. Then we're going to set it to the side so it can make up the filling. In a large measuring cup, I have 5 tablespoons of melted butter. And to that, I'm adding half a cup of brown sugar and 1 can of sweetened condensed milk. We're also going to add 3 teaspoons of ground cinnamon and 2.5 teaspoons of vanilla extract. Now you're going to mix this, and I think I forgot to mention, you'll want to do this in a heat-safe bowl. That's why I used my glass measuring cup. Now I'm going to pop it in the microwave for about a minute, and then take it out and stir it, and then if it needs like 30 seconds more, I'll do it again until it's completely melted and well combined. Now we're going to grab that cake, and you can use anything you want here to poke holes in this cake. You can use the end of a wooden spoon, or do like me and use your little mixer attachment. For something like this, I like to make the holes tiny, use something to make them tiny, and then do a whole lot of holes on top. That way that glaze goes all down into that cake. And I know it looks like a lot, but pour it all on there. And then just take your spoon or your spatula or whatever and kind of work it down into those holes. And I'm telling you, you do not want to leave any behind here. You want to use it all. This right here is what makes this cake so good. And if you let it sit for a minute, that cake will eventually soak it all up. Now we're going to move over to the stand mixer so we can make up a frosting to spread on top. I added a stick of softened butter in there, along with 8 ounces of softened cream cheese, 2 teaspoons of vanilla, and 2.5 cups of powdered sugar. And I'm just putting my paddle attachment on here, and I'm going to mix it until it's well combined and light and fluffy. And you do want to make sure you scrape the sides of the bowl down, and if you need to add a teaspoon or so of milk, you can. You just want to make sure you get that cream cheese and powdered sugar and all that mixed together. Okay, this is done. We're going to grab it and head back over to the cake. And we're just going to dollop it on there and spread it out until it completely covers the entire top of that cake. And by the way, this frosting is absolutely delicious. If you had another cake you wanted to make to add it to, it would be good on anything like strawberry, chocolate, vanilla, anything. And oh my goodness, it would be amazing on a red velvet cake. But after you get all that on there, this cake is ready to serve. This was so delicious. We all loved it. And if I had to pick a favorite poke cake, this would definitely be in my top 5. And just in case you're new here, I have made a lot of cake mix recipes. And if you've missed any of them, I'll be sure to link that playlist in the description box below. This was packed with cinnamon roll flavor, and I will be making it again. Probably this weekend, to be honest. I just had to throw in a French silk pie for all you chocolate lovers. In a medium-sized saucepan, I added 1 1/3 cup of sugar, along with 4 eggs. Now just cook those on medium-low heat. And you do want to whisk pretty constantly here. And just do that until it reaches 160 degrees. You'll know it's ready when it coats the back of a metal spoon. And now for the chocolate. I added 8 ounces of semi-sweet chocolate. You do want to chop it up, that way it completely melts. And I also added 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. Stir that until it's completely melted. Remove it from the heat and then let it completely cool. I'd say for about 45 minutes. Now over to my stand mixer, I added 2 sticks of room temperature butter, and I let that mix until it was light and fluffy. And if you're new, I always have the recipe either linked or typed out in the description box below. That way you don't miss anything. And when that chocolate mixture is completely cool, you can go ahead and add it to the butter. This stuff right here reminds me of chocolate sop. Well, that's what we call it. Most of you call it chocolate gravy. We eat it for breakfast. Oh yes. You'll have to let me know below if you want that recipe. And now I'm just mixing that until it's well combined. And that butter don't always get mixed in there. So just make sure you stop halfway through and use your spatula to scrape down the bottom of the bowl. I took a little shortcut on this recipe because that's what I do. If you want, you can whip up 8 ounces of heavy whipping cream and add in 2 tablespoons of powdered sugar and then fold that into the chocolate mixture, but I just added in an 8-ounce container of whipped topping. Just try your best to gently fold this in. That way it stays light and fluffy. You'll know it's well combined when you don't see any more streaks. Now you're going to pour all that filling into the crust of your choice. You can do a graham cracker crust or a chocolate one, but I'm using a refrigerated pie crust that I did fully bake and then I let it completely cool. And my pie plate is a deep dish, so if you do a graham cracker crust, make sure you get that 10-inch one. Now you're going to need to let that chill for at least 4 hours. And I know that's hard to do, but be patient, it's worth it. This pie is so amazing and it's actually pretty easy to make. And if you love chocolate, I can already tell you you're gonna love this one. It sets up so good. I like to top it with a little whipped cream. This pumpkin butterscotch bundt cake was a new family favorite for sure. In a large bowl, you're gonna add in a box of yellow cake mix. And I would try to use the 15.25 ounce boxes, any of the Duncan Hines, but in case you didn't know, Betty Crocker changed their box cake mix to 13.25 ounce. And instead of making 24 cupcakes like a cake mix usually makes, they only make 21. Crazy. Okay, back to the recipe here. I added in a small box of the instant butterscotch pudding mix. along with 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, 4 eggs, 1/4 cup of water, and 1/4 cup of vegetable oil. I'm also adding in 1 cup of the pure pumpkin puree. Now mix this until it's well combined, and you'll want to mix it for a good 2 minutes here. And I'm using a Bundt pan, and in case you're curious, mine's a 9.5 inch. And anytime I make a Bundt cake, I always grease it with Crisco and spray it with nonstick spray, and I have to use that Baker's Joy. It's the absolute best. Now that batter is super thick, but go ahead and spread it in as evenly as possible. And I like to swirl a knife around in there. I feel like that just helps to spread it out. And it also helps not to get it all over the inside of that pan there towards the top. Now this goes into the oven to bake at 350 for 35 to 45 minutes. And this is my favorite, and at the same time, it's the scariest part of making a Bundt cake. Because y'all, sometimes it comes out perfect, and sometimes only half the cake comes out. It did good for me on this day though. Perfect actually. And if you ever have a cake to fall apart on you, just go ahead and crumble that thing up and add in a little icing. Mix that up really good, roll them into balls, and dip them in chocolate. Those cake balls are the best. And this didn't call for a glaze, but I wanted to add a little something on top. And of course, I messed this part up. Since it was pumpkin butterscotch, I thought caramel would go good with that. So I mixed together some melted butter, powdered sugar, and that caramel sauce, and whisk it until it's very, very well combined. Oh, and here's where I might have messed up. I added just a little bit of milk. And you will have to work at this to get it to mix together well. But trust me, it's better to kind of work with it and stir it really good and give it a little time before you go adding too much liquid. Now grab that Bundt cake and you're going to drizzle it right over the top. And at first it looked like it was going to be perfect. And then it pretty much just ran all off of the cake. So y'all know me, I ended up mixing up some more, minus the milk. And I think that did much better. But you could totally skip the glaze if you want, and you could just dust it with some powdered sugar. Make it a whole lot easier. I did drizzle on a little of that Hershey's caramel syrup, but I wish I had had some of the Hershey's ice cream topping caramel. That's a lot thicker and that would have done much better. This was so good. I think you'll love it. I really hope you enjoyed this video. You may also like these. Don't forget to subscribe down below for more easy recipes. Oh, and I want to wish you a very, very Merry Christmas, and I will see you in the next one.